blood on his hands. That's all Ethan Moore could see as the sirens wailed closer. His daughter Sophie stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide with terror. The stranger he'd just saved trembled behind him, whispering words that would shatter his entire world. "They'll come back for me, and next time they'll kill anyone who gets in their way." In that moment, Ethan realized his act of heroism hadn't saved anyone. It had painted a target on everyone he loved. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Now let's dive into this incredible journey. "Daddy, I think that lady's gonna die." Those 7 words from his 10-year-old daughter would haunt Ethan Moore for the rest of his life. It was supposed to be their night, just the 2 of them. Sophie had nailed her piano recital, Beethoven's Für Elise, every note perfect, and she'd earned her favorite reward, bottomless milkshakes at Rosie's Diner on the corner of 5th and Madison, the same diner where Ethan's late wife used to take them on Friday nights back when life made sense. Thursday, 8:47 p.m. Ethan would remember the time forever because he'd just checked his watch, calculating whether they could squeeze in dessert before Sophie's bedtime. The overhead lights hummed their familiar tune. The smell of coffee and grilled onions hung thick in the air. Sophie was mid-sentence, chocolate milkshake mustache, decorating her upper lip, telling him about how nervous she'd been before walking on stage. And then Mrs. Patterson smiled at me, and I remembered what you always say. The door exploded inward, not opened, exploded. A woman crashed through it, like she'd been thrown, stumbling, catching herself on the nearest table. Her breathing came in ragged gasps. Dark hair plastered to her face with sweat. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers. Her white blouse was torn at the shoulder, exposing a nasty purple bruise blooming across her collarbone. The diner went silent. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died on people's lips. Ethan's military instincts, the ones he'd tried to bury 6 years ago when he'd left the army to become a single dad, kicked in immediately. He stood, putting himself between Sophie and the door. "Stay in the booth, sweetheart." "But Daddy." "Stay." The woman's eyes darted around the diner, wild, desperate. She was looking for somewhere to hide, someone to help. Her gaze landed on Ethan for a split second, just long enough for him to see the raw terror living there, before she looked away, stumbling toward the bathroom. She didn't make it 3 steps. 2 men burst through the door behind her, both wearing black leather jackets despite the warm Chicago evening. Both with faces that had seen violence and liked it. The first one was tall, lanky, with a spiderweb tattoo crawling up his neck. The second was shorter, built like a fire hydrant, with knuckles that looked like they'd broken more noses than Ethan could count. "There you are," Spiderweb said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "We've been looking everywhere for you, Lena." Lena, so that was her name. She pressed herself against the counter, hands raised, like she could push them away with sheer willpower. "I don't know what you want. I don't know anything." "Oh, honey." Fire Hydrant smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "You know exactly what we want." The other diners were watching now, phones out, probably filming. Nobody moved to help. Nobody ever did. Ethan knew this dance. He'd seen it in Kabul, in Kandahar, in every dark corner where predators found prey. He also knew what his daughter was about to say before the words left her mouth. "Daddy." Sophie's voice was small, scared, but determined. The same determination she'd had when she'd demanded they adopt the 3-legged dog from the shelter last year. "Daddy, can we help her?" Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. He thought about his daughter. He thought about the auto repair shop that barely kept them afloat. He thought about doctor's appointments and school plays and all the normal, safe things a single dad was supposed to protect. He thought about his wife Rachel, who'd made him promise on her deathbed, "Take care of our girl, keep her safe, don't be a hero anymore." Then he looked at Lena, really looked at her, and saw what everyone else was trying not to see. A human being who'd run out of options. A woman who'd chosen a public place as her last desperate stand because she knew these men wouldn't stop. "Yeah, baby," he heard himself say. "Yeah, we can help her." He stepped forward. Spiderweb's eyes narrowed. "This ain't your business, friend." "I'm making it my business." "Ethan, no." Lena's voice cracked. "Don't. Please, you don't understand what—" "Ma'am," Ethan said quietly, never taking his eyes off the 2 men. "Why don't you step behind me?" "Listen to your girlfriend," Fire Hydrant said, cracking his knuckles. "Walk away. Forget you saw anything. We just need to have a conversation with our associate here." "Your associate looks like she's been through a hell of a conversation already." Ethan's voice stayed level calm, the same tone he'd used to talk down hostile villagers in Afghanistan. "Here's what's gonna happen. You two are gonna turn around and walk out that door. The lady stays here. We call the police. Everyone goes home happy." Spiderweb laughed. Actually laughed. "You got a death wish, old man. I'm 36. You'll be a dead 36 if you don't move." Behind him, Ethan heard Sophie's breathing quicken. He heard Lena whisper something that sounded like a prayer. He heard Old Man Jenkins, the diner owner, finally reaching for the phone under the counter to call 911, but mostly, he heard his own heartbeat. Steady, calm, ready. "Last chance," fire hydrant said, taking a step closer. "Step aside." Ethan didn't move. What happened next took maybe 15 seconds. To Ethan, it felt like 15 hours. Fire hydrant reached for Lena's arm. Ethan intercepted, catching the man's wrist and twisting. There was a satisfying crack, not broken, just badly sprained, and fire hydrant howled. Spiderweb came in from the side, faster than Ethan expected, landing a punch to his ribs that would leave a bruise the size of Texas. Ethan absorbed it, pivoted, used Spiderweb's momentum against him. He grabbed the nearest chair, one of those old chrome and vinyl ones from the 50s, and brought it up just as Spiderweb lunged. Metal met jaw with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Spiderweb went down hard. Fire hydrant was back up, cradling his wrist, but furious now. He grabbed a butter knife from the nearest table, not deadly but enough to do damage, and came at Ethan in a wild rush. Ethan sidestepped, caught fire hydrant's arm, and used his own momentum to send him crashing into the jukebox. Glass shattered. The jukebox jumped to a different song. Patsy Cline started singing Crazy as fire hydrant slumped to the floor, dazed. The whole diner erupted in chaos. People screaming, scrambling for the exit. Sophie crying, Lena frozen against the counter, eyes locked on Ethan like he was some kind of guardian angel. "Daddy!" Sophie's voice cut through everything. "Daddy, you're bleeding!" Ethan looked down. She was right. His knuckles were split, blood dripping onto the black and white checkered floor. He hadn't even felt it. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "It's okay, sweetheart," Ethan said, his voice surprisingly steady. "I'm okay." But he wasn't looking at Sophie when he said it. He was looking at Lena, who'd slid down the counter to the floor, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. The police burst in 3 minutes later, Officers Martinez and Chen, both of whom knew Ethan from the neighborhood. They took one look at the scene and immediately separated everyone. Spiderweb and fire hydrant were cuffed. Read their rights loaded into separate patrol cars. Both were shouting about pressing charges, about assault, about how Ethan had attacked them unprovoked. "That true?" Officer Martinez asked Ethan, pulling him aside. "Ask the 30 witnesses who filmed it on their phones." Martinez nodded slowly. "And the woman?" They both looked over at Lena, who was now sitting in a booth, wrapped in someone's jacket, staring at nothing. Officer Chen was trying to ask her questions, but Lena wasn't responding, just shaking her head over and over. "She got a name?" Martinez asked. "Lena, that's all I know." "She gonna press charges?" Ethan watched as Chen tried again and again. Lena shook her head, fear rolling off her in waves. "I don't think so," Ethan said quietly. Martinez cursed under his breath. "Without her testimony, those two walk. You know that, right? Self-defense only goes so far when the victim won't corroborate." "I know." "Ethan." Martinez put a hand on his shoulder. "I've known you since you moved here. You're a good guy. Good dad. But you can't save everyone. I know that too." But even as he said it, Ethan found himself watching Lena, watching the way she flinched every time someone moved too quickly, the way she kept looking at the door like those men might come back, the way she seemed to be trying to make herself as small as possible, like if she just disappeared enough, the world would forget she existed. Officer Chen walked over, shaking her head. "She won't talk, won't give us a statement, won't even confirm her full name." "Can you at least get her somewhere safe?" Ethan asked. "She's an adult. If she won't press charges, won't ask for help, there's not much we can do." Chen looked frustrated. "Best I can offer is a ride wherever she wants to go." "That's it. That's the law." They finished taking statements, collected phone numbers from witnesses, took photos of Ethan's injuries for the report. The whole time, Sophie sat in their booth, hugging herself, watching her father like she was seeing him for the first time. An hour later, the police cleared out. Old man Jenkins started cleaning up the broken glass, muttering about insurance and deductibles. The other diners had long since scattered their meals, half-eaten, their night out ruined. Ethan walked over to Lena's booth. She looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know why you did that, but thank you. You needed help." No one else thought so. Ethan didn't have an answer for that. He glanced over at Sophie, who was still watching them, then back at Lena. "You got somewhere to go, someone to call." Lena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "If I did, I wouldn't be here. The police offered you a ride. To where? A shelter that'll ask questions I can't answer, a hotel I can't afford." She shook her head. "I'll figure it out. I always do." Ethan found himself doing something stupid, something Rachel would have called his hero complex, something that violated every bit of common sense he'd built up over 6 years of playing it safe. He took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "It's cold out there," he said. "You should have something warm." Lena stared at the jacket like it was made of gold. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it tighter around herself. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Bring it back when you're ready." "I don't even know your name." Ethan Moore." "Lena Carter." She managed a weak smile. "In case you were wondering if I had a last name." "Ms. Carter." Ethan nodded. Then, because Sophie was watching and he needed his daughter to understand something important. "If you need anything at all, Moore's Auto Repair on Ashland Avenue. Ask for me." He didn't wait for her response. He walked back to Sophie, helped her gather her things, left money on the table for their uneaten meal and the damage. As they walked to the parking lot, Sophie slipped her hand into his. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. Is she gonna be okay?" Ethan looked back through the diner window. Lena was still sitting there, his jacket wrapped around her shoulders, staring at her hands. "I don't know," he admitted, because that was another thing Rachel had taught him: always be honest with Sophie, even when the truth hurt. "But we helped her, right? That's what matters." "Yes, sweetheart, that's what matters." They drove home in silence. Sophie fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window. Beethoven sheet music clutched in her lap. Ethan kept seeing Lena's face, the fear, the resignation, the surprise when he'd stepped in. He kept seeing those two men, too, the way they'd known her name, the way they'd talked about conversation like it was code for something much worse, the way they'd come prepared to drag her out of that diner, whether she wanted to go or not. At home, he carried Sophie to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. She stirred, mumbled something about piano and helping ladies, then settled back into sleep. Ethan stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. His knuckles throbbed. His ribs ached. Tomorrow he'd wake up covered in bruises. Tomorrow those two men would walk free because Lena wouldn't testify. Tomorrow life would go back to normal. Except it wouldn't. Ethan knew it wouldn't, because he'd seen something in Lena's eyes when he'd given her his jacket. He'd seen hope. The dangerous kind. The kind that made people think maybe they didn't have to run anymore. He walked to his bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from Martinez. A text: "Those guys made bail. Watch yourself." Ethan deleted the message. He didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to think about the fact that he'd just made himself a target. Didn't want to think about whether Lena would show up at his shop or disappear into whatever nightmare she was running from. But he did think about it. All night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. And somewhere in Chicago, in a cheap motel room she'd paid for with the last of her cash, Lena Carter sat on the edge of a stained mattress wearing Ethan Moore's jacket and allowed herself to cry. Real tears this time, not scared tears, not helpless tears, grateful tears. Because for the first time in 8 months of running, someone had stood up for her. Someone had put themselves between her and the monsters. Someone had looked at her and seen a person worth protecting. She pulled the jacket tighter, breathed in the smell of motor oil and coffee, and something that reminded her of safety. On the nightstand, a business card she'd slipped from the jacket pocket: Moore's Auto Repair. Ethan Moore, proprietor, Ashland Avenue. She picked it up, traced the raised letters with her finger. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she'd return the jacket and disappear again. That was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But as she finally fell asleep still wearing that jacket, Lena Carter dreamed of piano recitals and chocolate milkshakes and a 10-year-old girl who'd asked the question that changed everything. "Daddy, can we help her?" The bell above the shop door chimed at exactly 7:43 a.m. Ethan was under a '98 Honda Civic, hands black with grease, when he heard it. He didn't think much of it. Customers sometimes showed up early, desperate for their cars before work. He slid out from under the chassis, wiping his hands on a rag that was already beyond saving. "Be right with you." The words died in Ampera's throat. Lena Carter stood in his doorway holding 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. She was wearing the same torn blouse from last night now, safety pinned at the shoulder. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd slept about as well as Ethan had. His jacket was folded neatly over her arm. "Hi," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I know it's early. I can come back." "No." Ethan stood up too fast, banging his head on the Civic's bumper. "No, it's fine. I'm just surprised. I brought coffee. I didn't know how you take it, so I got cream and sugar on the side." She held out one of the cups like a peace offering. "And there's a blueberry muffin in the bag, or apple. The lady at the bakery said both were good, and I couldn't decide, so I got both, which probably seems crazy, but—" "Lena." Ethan took the coffee gently. "Breathe." She stopped talking, drew in a shaky breath, let it out slow. "Black's perfect," Ethan said. "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between them. Outside, Chicago was waking up traffic, building people rushing to jobs. They probably hated the city grinding forward like it did every morning. Inside the shop, time felt suspended. "Your jacket," Lena finally said, holding it out. "I washed it. Well, I tried to wash it in the motel sink, but I think I might have made it worse. There's a grease stain on the sleeve that wasn't there before, and I'm so sorry. Keep it." "What? It's cold. You need it more than I do." Ethan took a sip of coffee. It was perfect. Not gas station swill, but real coffee from that fancy place on the corner that charged $6 a cup. "How'd you even afford—" "It's the least I could do." Lena's fingers twisted around the jacket. "After what you did, after you—" Her voice cracked. "Nobody's ever done that for me before." "Done what basic human decency? You don't understand. Those men—" She stopped, looked away. "You could have died. Your daughter was right there, and you could have died, and it would have been my fault. Those men made their choices. I made mine." Ethan set down his coffee, met her eyes. "You didn't ask for any of this. I should have stayed away. I should have kept running, but I couldn't." She pulled the business card from her pocket, the one she'd taken from his jacket. "I had to see you, had to make sure you were okay, that Sophie was okay. We're fine, little bruised, but fine. The police said those men made bail. Yeah. Which means they're out there, looking for me." Lena's hands started shaking. The coffee cup trembled, threatening to spill. "Which means everyone around me is in danger. Which means I need to leave Chicago. Today, right now. I just wanted to return your jacket and say thank you, and—" "Lena." Ethan stepped closer, his voice gentle. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" She blinked. "What? Humor me. When? I don't remember. 2 days, maybe 3. Ethan pulled over a rolling stool, the kind mechanics use to slide under cars. "Sit. I can't. Please." Something in his tone made her obey. She sat still, clutching his jacket, the coffee and pastries balanced on her lap like fragile treasures. Ethan grabbed his own stool, sat across from her, close enough to talk, far enough to not crowd her. He'd learned that in the army, how to approach someone running on adrenaline and fear, give them space, give them control. "Those men," he said quietly. "They're not going to stop, are they?" Lena shook her head, tears building in her eyes. "And you've been running for how long?" 8 months. Her voice was hollow. 8 months, 11 cities, and they always find me. Always. Why? Because I saw something I shouldn't have seen, and I was stupid enough to think I could do something about it." She laughed bitterly. "I was a paralegal. Nobody important. Just a paralegal at Morrison Development Corporation. I did paperwork, filed documents, made coffee for lawyers who didn't know my name. What did you see? Money, lots of money, moving through shell companies, fake invoices, construction projects that didn't exist." She was talking faster now, like a dam breaking. "My boss, Thomas Morrison, he was laundering money for someone. I don't even know who. I just saw the numbers, saw the patterns, and I thought if I went to the authorities, if I did the right thing, they didn't believe you. Oh, they believed me. The FBI opened an investigation, and 2 days later, Morrison's people showed up at my apartment." She touched the bruise on her collarbone, the one Ethan had seen last night. "This was from that visit, a warning. They told me to recant my statement or disappear, so I disappeared. And the FBI said they couldn't protect me without more evidence. said I should lay low until they built their case. She laughed again, sharper this time. That was 8 months ago. I've been laying low ever since. But Morrison's people, they're everywhere. Every time I think I'm safe, every time I find a new job, a new place to sleep, they show up. Ethan processed this, his mind working through scenarios and solutions. Last night, those two in the diner, they were Morrison's people. Yes, I recognized them from the office, Morrison's security consultants. She made air quotes with trembling fingers, which is a fancy way of saying thugs with better dental insurance. And now they know you're in Chicago, which is why I have to leave today. If they come back and find me, if they hurt you or Sophie because I was selfish enough to, you're not leaving. Lena stared at him. What? I said you're not leaving. Ethan leaned forward. Running hasn't worked. 8 months, 11 cities. They keep finding you because you're alone. You're easy prey. But what if you weren't alone anymore? Ethan, you can't. I need help at the shop. Answering phones, managing appointments, basic bookkeeping. Nothing fancy. Pays minimum wage, but it comes with benefits. Benefits. A safe place to work. People around you. A reason to stay in one spot long enough to fight back instead of run. He watched her carefully. Unless you want to keep living out of motel rooms for the rest of your life. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You're insane. You have a daughter. You have a life. You can't just... My daughter was the one who asked me to help you. Should I tell her I changed my mind because it got complicated? That's not fair. Life's not fair, but we get to choose how we respond to it. Ethan stood up, grabbed a clipboard from his desk, handed it to her. I need someone who can start Monday. Job application. Fill it out. References optional because I'm guessing you don't have any that won't get you killed. Lena took the clipboard with shaking hands. Why are you doing this? Because Sophie was right. Because someone needs to help you, and because... He paused, searching for the right words. Because 6 years ago my wife died of cancer, and for months after I kept waiting for someone to show up and tell me it would be okay, to give me a reason to keep going when everything felt impossible. Nobody came. I had to figure it out alone. He met her eyes. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, he said simply. Lena broke, just completely broke. The tears came fast and hard, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd probably been holding in for 8 months. Ethan didn't touch her, didn't try to comfort her with empty words. He just handed her a clean shop rag and let her cry. When she finally stopped, her eyes were red and swollen, but something had shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like hope. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll fill out the application. Good. Come back Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp. I'll show you the ropes. What if they come back? What if... We'll deal with it, together. Ethan picked up his coffee, raised it slightly. Welcome to Moore's Auto Repair, Ms. Carter. Lena managed a weak smile, the first real one Ethan had seen from her. Call me Lena. Lena, it is. She left 20 minutes later, the job application filled out in surprisingly neat handwriting, the pastries still in the bag, because Ethan had insisted she take them with her. His jacket was still draped over her shoulders. She'd tried to give it back again, but he'd refused. Monday, he called after her as she walked to the bus stop. 7 a.m. She turned, waved, and for just a moment she looked like a normal woman heading to a normal job instead of someone running for her life. Ethan watched until she disappeared around the corner, then pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 3 years. Martinez, it's Ethan Moore. Ethan, everything okay? I need information on a Thomas Morrison, Morrison Development Corporation, and I need it quietly. There was a pause. This about last night. Maybe. Ethan, if you're thinking about playing detective. I'm thinking about keeping a woman safe. Can you help or not? Another pause. Then I'll see what I can find. No promises. That's all I'm asking. Monday morning came faster than Ethan expected. He'd spent the weekend preparing, reorganizing the office, setting up a desk, explaining to Sophie that they were going to have some help at the shop. Is it the lady from the diner? Sophie had asked, her eyes lighting up. Yeah, baby. Her name's Lena. She's going to be working with us for a while. Because she needs help. Because we need help. And sometimes those things are the same. Sophie had nodded seriously, then asked if she could make a welcome sign. Ethan had said yes, mostly because he couldn't say no to his daughter when she got that determined look in her eyes. Now it was Monday, 6:55 a.m., and Ethan was rearranging the desk for the third time, wondering if he'd made a massive mistake. The bell chimed at 6:58. Lena walked in wearing clothes that actually fit black pants, a simple blue blouse, her hair pulled back professionally. She looked nervous but determined. Behind her, running in from the parking lot, Sophie burst through the door, holding a piece of poster board covered in glitter and badly drawn flowers. "Welcome, Miss Lena," it proclaimed in rainbow letters. Lena stopped dead staring at the sign. "I made it myself," Sophie announced proudly. "Daddy said you were going to work here and I wanted you to feel welcome because new jobs are scary. And one time I was new at school and everyone was really nice and it made me feel better, so I thought maybe this would make you feel better too." She said it all in one breath the way 10-year-olds do. Lena knelt down eye level with Sophie. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me. Really, really. Can I hug you? Daddy says I should always ask first because some people don't like hugs, but I really want to hug you." Lena's eyes went shiny with tears. Yes, you can hug me." Sophie launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Lena's neck. Lena hugged back and Ethan saw her shoulders shake slightly. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "Okay, kiddo," Ethan said gently. "Bus'll be here in 5 minutes. You need to get moving. But I want to help show Miss Lena around. After school, I promise. Now go grab your backpack." Sophie groaned but obeyed, running to the back office where they kept her school stuff. She yelled goodbye, hugged Lena one more time, then disappeared out the door in a whirlwind of energy and glitter. The shop fell quiet. "She's amazing," Lena said softly. "She's exhausting," Ethan replied, but he was smiling. "Okay, let's get you started." The first week was rough. Not because Lena couldn't do the work. She picked up the phone system in an hour, had the appointment calendar organized by day 2, and discovered a billing error in Ethan's books that saved him $300. But every time a car backfired outside, she flinched. Every time the door opened unexpectedly, her hand went to her throat. Every time a customer raised their voice, even just from frustration about repair costs, she went pale. Ethan noticed, didn't comment, just made sure she had space to breathe. Sophie noticed too, started bringing extra cookies in her lunchbox, leaving them on Lena's desk with little notes. "You got this. Bad days don't last forever. Smile, you're awesome." By Friday, Lena was smiling more, still jumping at loud noises, still checking the parking lot every 10 minutes, but smiling. Friday afternoon, after the last customer left, Ethan found her staring at Sophie's welcome sign, which they'd hung on the office wall. "Thank you," she said without turning around, "for giving me a chance, for not treating me like I'm broken." "You're not broken. You're surviving. There's a difference. Sometimes it doesn't feel different." "I know." She turned to face him. "Those men, Morrison's people, they haven't shown up all week. I keep waiting for it, keep expecting them to burst through that door, but maybe they moved on. Maybe they're looking somewhere else. Or maybe they're watching, waiting for the right moment." Ethan couldn't argue with that. He'd been watching the parking lot too, had started varying his route home, had installed a new deadbolt on his apartment door, just in case. "We'll handle it if they come," he said. "That's all we can do." Lena nodded, but the fear didn't leave her eyes. That night, Sophie fell asleep on the couch watching a movie. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in, then found himself standing at his window, looking out at the street below, watching for black SUVs, watching for men in leather jackets. His phone buzzed. Martinez. "Found some info on Morrison. Not good. Call me." Ethan stepped into the hallway, dialed. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "Thomas Morrison is connected, and I mean seriously connected. The FBI's been building a case for 2 years, but he's got lawyers, politicians, judges on his payroll. Your friend, Lena, she's not the first person who tried to testify against him. What happened to the others?" Silence. "Martinez, what happened to the others?" "1 disappeared, 2 recanted their statements, 1 died in a car accident that looked a little too convenient." Martinez exhaled hard. "Ethan, you need to tell this woman to get as far away from Chicago as possible. Morrison doesn't leave loose ends. She's been running for 8 months. It hasn't worked. Then she needs to run faster. Or she needs to stand and fight. With what hope and good intentions Morrison has an army. You have a wrench and a 10-year-old daughter." Martinez's voice went sharp. "Think about Sophie, man. Think about what you're risking." "I am thinking about Sophie. I'm thinking about what kind of man I want her father to be. A dead one. A decent one." Martinez cursed. "You're gonna get yourself killed." Maybe, but at least I'll die knowing I tried to do the right thing. Righteousness doesn't stop bullets, Ethan. Neither does running. He hung up before Martinez could argue further. The second week started quiet. Too quiet. Ethan felt it in his bones, that combat-ready tension he'd learned to trust in Afghanistan. The feeling that something was coming. Lena felt it too. Started arriving early, leaving late. Kept a burner phone in her desk drawer that Ethan pretended not to notice. On Tuesday, a black sedan parked across the street for 3 hours. Just sitting there, watching. Ethan called Martinez. By the time the patrol car arrived, the sedan was gone. On Wednesday, someone left a note under Lena's car windshield. "We know where you work." She brought it to Ethan with shaking hands. "That's it," she said. "I'm leaving, tonight. I won't put you and Sophie in danger anymore." "No, Ethan," I said no. He took the note, crumpled it, threw it in the trash. "They want you scared. They want you running. Don't give them the satisfaction. This isn't a game. You're right. It's not. It's your life, and you deserve to live it without constantly looking over your shoulder. And Sophie deserves a father who doesn't get killed protecting strangers. You're not a stranger anymore." The words hung between them, Lena's eyes filled with tears. "What am I then?" Ethan didn't have an answer, not one he was ready to say out loud. Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Sophie was at the shop doing homework at Lena's desk, while Lena helped a customer at the counter. Ethan was in the garage replacing brake pads on a Toyota when he heard the bell chime. Then he heard Sophie scream. He was out from under the car in seconds, sprinting toward the office, his heart in his throat. Spiderweb and fire hydrant stood in the doorway. Same leather jackets, same cruel smiles. But this time, fire hydrant had his hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Let her go," Ethan said, his voice deadly calm. "Can't do that, friend," Spiderweb grinned. "See, we came for our property." He nodded at Lena, who'd gone white as paper. "But your daughter decided to get mouthy, said we weren't welcome here. She's 10 years old enough to know when to shut up." Fire hydrant's grip tightened on Sophie's shoulder. She whimpered. Ethan's vision went red. Every combat instinct screamed at him to attack, to destroy, to eliminate the threat. But Sophie was too close. Any wrong move and she'd get hurt. "Let her go," he repeated. "Take me instead." "Daddy, no." "Sophie, it's okay, baby. Everything's okay." It wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. Lena stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "You want me? Fine, I'll go. Just let the child go, please." "Oh, you're definitely coming with us," Spiderweb said. "Question is whether anyone else needs to get hurt in the process." That's when Lena did something that surprised everyone. She smiled. Not a scared smile, not a defeated smile, a knowing smile. "You're right," she said. "Someone probably will get hurt, but it's not going to be them." She pulled out her phone, held it up so they could see the screen. A video call, active, recording. On the other end, Agent Sarah Chen, FBI. "Hi there," Agent Chen said pleasantly. "I've got everything on tape. Threats against a minor attempted kidnapping and, oh look, positive visual ID on both suspects from Ms. Carter's original complaint. Thank you for making this so easy, gentlemen." Spiderweb and fire hydrant froze. "Chicago PD is approximately 90 seconds out," Agent Chen continued. "You can run or you can wait. Either way, you're done." Fire hydrant released Sophie immediately. She ran to Ethan, who caught her in his arms, holding her so tight she gasped. Sirens wailed outside, getting closer. Spiderweb backed toward the door. Morrison will be in federal custody by end of business today," Agent Chen said. "We've got enough evidence to put him away for 30 years. Congratulations on being the final pieces of our case." The two men bolted. They made it maybe 20 feet before 4 squad cars screeched into the parking lot, officers spilling out with weapons drawn. Ethan held Sophie, watching through the window. As both men were taken down, handcuffed, read their rights for the second time in 2 weeks. Lena was still holding her phone, still on the call with Agent Chen, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over," Agent Chen confirmed. "We'll need you for testimony, but Morrison's going down. You're safe, Ms. Carter. Finally safe." Lena dropped the phone, sank into a chair, and sobbed. Later, much later, after the police had taken statements and left, after Sophie had been checked by paramedics and declared fine despite everything, after the FBI had collected evidence and promised Lena protective custody. Until the trial, Ethan sat in his office with a cup of cold coffee and shaking hands. Sophie was asleep in the back room. exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Lena sat across from him, looking equally drained. "How long?" Ethan asked quietly. "How long have you been working with the FBI?" "Since Tuesday, when the note appeared. I called Agent Chen, told her I was done running, that it was time to make a stand." Lena managed a weak smile. "She said she'd been waiting 8 months for me to say that. You used yourself as bait. I used myself as someone worth protecting. There's a difference." She echoed his words from their first day. "You taught me that." Ethan didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," Lena continued. "I'm sorry I put you and Sophie in danger. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the FBI plan. I couldn't keep running, and I couldn't let them hurt the people who'd actually shown me kindness. It worked out this time, but what if it hadn't? What if Sophie had? But she didn't. She's fine. We're all fine." Ethan set down his coffee cup. "And Morrison's going to prison." "Yeah." Lena laughed shakily. "Yeah, he is." They sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. Finally, Lena spoke. "I should go. FBI's putting me up in a hotel until the trial. Witness protection protocol." "For how long?" "Could be weeks, could be months. Depends on how fast they move the case." She stood, grabbed her purse. "I'll understand if you need to hire someone else for the shop. I've caused enough chaos in your life. The job will be here when you get back." Lena stopped, turned. "You mean that Sophie would kill me if I didn't? She's already planning to teach you how to braid hair when this is all over." For the first time since this whole nightmare started, Lena laughed. Really laughed. The sound filled the shop like music. "Tell her I'm looking forward to it," she said. Then she left, escorted by 2 FBI agents in an unmarked car, disappearing into the Chicago night with the promise of maybe finally getting her life back. Ethan locked up the shop, woke Sophie, gently carried her to the car. "Is Miss Lena okay?" Sophie mumbled against his shoulder. "Yeah, baby, she's gonna be just fine." "Good, I like her." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." As Ethan drove home through the quiet streets, he thought about choices, about the moment in that diner when Sophie had asked if they could help, about the moment this morning when everything could have gone wrong, but didn't, about how sometimes doing the right thing meant risking everything, and about how sometimes, just sometimes, it actually worked out. 3 weeks passed before Lena came back to the shop. 3 weeks of Sophie asking every single morning if today was the day Miss Lena would return. 3 weeks of Ethan answering phones himself and realizing just how much he'd come to rely on her organizational skills. 3 weeks of the office feeling emptier than it had any right to feel. When she finally walked through the door on a Tuesday morning, she looked different, rested. The dark circles were gone. Her hair was cut shorter, professional. She was wearing a gray blazer that made her look like someone who worked in an office instead of someone running for her life. Sophie launched herself across the shop before Ethan could even say hello. "Miss Lena, you're back. I missed you so much. Did the FBI treat you nice? Daddy said they were keeping you safe, and I made you 17 drawings, but he said I couldn't mail them because of security or something, so I saved them all, and they're in my backpack, and—" "Sophie," Ethan called gently. "Let the woman breathe." Lena was laughing, tears already forming in her eyes as she hugged Sophie back. "I missed you too, sweetheart, so much." "Are you back for real, like forever back?" Lena looked up at Ethan over Sophie's head. Something passed between them, a question neither of them had quite asked yet. "I'm back," Lena said, "for as long as you'll have me." Sophie squealed and hugged her tighter. The morning rush kept them busy, oil changes, tire rotations, a transmission that needed Ethan's full attention. It wasn't until lunch, after Sophie had left for school, with promises to show Lena all 17 drawings after class, that Ethan and Lena finally had a moment alone. They sat in the office sharing a pizza that Lena had ordered from the place down the street. "So," Ethan said, taking a slice, "how'd it go?" "Morrison's in federal custody. No bail. They've got him on money laundering, racketeering conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering." She counted off on her fingers. "And about 15 other charges I can't even pronounce. His lawyers are already trying to make deals, but Agent Chen says the evidence is airtight. Because of you. Because I finally stopped running." Lena picked at her pizza crust. "Trial's set for 6 weeks from now. They'll need me to testify, but Chen says it's mostly a formality at this point. Morrison's done. And those two from the diner, Spiderweb and Fire Hydrant." Lena smiled slightly at Ethan's nicknames for them. also in custody. Turns out they were wanted for assault in 3 other states. They're looking at serious time. Good. They ate in silence for a moment. I owe you an apology, Lena said quietly, for not telling you about the FBI plan, for using the shop as a place to finally stand your ground. Ethan interrupted. Don't apologize for that. I put Sophie in danger. No, Morrison's people put Sophie in danger. You ended it. He met her eyes. There's a difference. Lena nodded, but the guilt didn't quite leave her face. Agent Chen said something interesting. She said most witnesses never fight back. They just keep running until they can't run anymore. She asked me what changed. What did you tell her? That I found something worth fighting for. Lena's voice went soft. That for the first time in 8 months, someone looked at me and saw more than just a problem to solve. You and Sophie, you saw a person, and I couldn't let Morrison take that away. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he did what he always did when emotions got complicated. He changed the subject. The books are a mess without you. I think I accidentally scheduled 3 people for the same time slot yesterday. Lena laughed, grateful for the deflection. Well, I guess you really do need me then. Guess so. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Lena arrived every morning at 7, usually with coffee for both of them. She'd organize the day's appointments, handle customer calls, manage invoices that Ethan had been neglecting for months. Sophie would burst in after school, dump her backpack in the corner, and spend the next 2 hours doing homework at Lena's desk while regaling her with detailed accounts of 4th-grade drama. And then Madison said that Brooklyn's shoes were ugly, but they're not ugly, they're just different. And I told Madison that being different isn't the same as being ugly. And Mrs. Patterson heard and said I was very mature, so I think Madison's mad at me now, but Brooklyn said, thank you, so that's good, right? Lena would nod seriously as if this was the most important thing she'd heard all day. That's very good, Sophie. Standing up for people is always the right choice. That's what Daddy says too. That's why he stood up for you. Your daddy's a smart man. I know, he's the best. Sophie would lean closer, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. But don't tell him I said that. He'll get a big head. Ethan, listening from the garage, would smile to himself and pretend he hadn't heard. One evening, about 5 weeks after Lena's return, Ethan locked up the shop to find Sophie and Lena sitting on the curb outside sharing a bag of gummy bears and watching the sunset paint the Chicago sky in shades of orange and pink. What are we doing out here? He asked. Miss Lena's teaching me about the stars, Sophie said. Did you know that the light from stars takes so long to get here that some of them might not even exist anymore? We're seeing the past. That's pretty heavy for a Tuesday. She asked, Lena said, shrugging. I used to love astronomy before everything got complicated. What else did you love? Before, Lena thought about it. Reading, old bookstores, the kind that smell like paper and dust, hiking on weekends, my mom's lasagna recipe that I never learned because I always thought there'd be more time. Is your mom? She died when I was 23, car accident. Lena's voice was matter-of-fact, but Ethan heard the old pain underneath. It's just me now, no siblings, no other family, which made it easier to disappear, I guess. Nobody to miss me. Sophie looked up at her with wide eyes. I'd miss you, if you disappeared. Yeah? Lena's voice cracked slightly. Yeah, a lot. Lena pulled Sophie closer, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Well, I'm not disappearing. Not anymore. Ethan watched them, these 2 people who'd somehow become essential to his daily life, and felt something shift in his chest. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. That night, after dropping Sophie at home with a neighbor, who sometimes watched her in the evenings, Ethan drove back to the shop. He'd told Sophie he needed to finish some paperwork, but really, he just needed to think. He found Lena still there, sitting at her desk under the harsh fluorescent lights, staring at her computer screen. Thought you went home, he said. She jumped, startled. Sorry, I got caught up in these invoices and lost track of time. I should go. It's fine. I came back to work on some stuff too. He grabbed a beer from the mini fridge he kept in the corner, held one up questioningly. You drink, I do now. He tossed her one, grabbed another for himself, pulled up a stool next to her desk. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only develops between people who've been through something together. Can I ask you something? Lena said finally. Shoot. Why'd you really hire me? And don't say it was because you needed help at the shop. You managed fine for years before I showed up. Ethan took a long drink, considering his answer. You remember what I told you about my wife, Rachel? You said she died of cancer. Stage 4 pancreatic. Diagnosed on Sophie's 4th birthday. Gone 6 months later. He stared at his beer bottle. Those 6 months were hell. Watching her fade, trying to be strong for Sophie, knowing there was nothing I could do to stop it. After she died, I spent a year just existing, going through the motions, taking care of Sophie because I had to, not because I wanted to. What changed? Sophie did. One day she looked at me and said, "Daddy, are you sad because Mommy's gone or because you forgot how to be happy?" She was 5 years old. Lena let out a soft breath. Wise kid. Terrifying kid, more like. Ethan smiled despite himself. But she was right. I'd forgotten that life happens whether you're ready or not. That you can either hide from it or face it head on. So I hired you because when you walked through that door, I saw someone who needed to remember that same lesson, and I figured maybe we could help each other remember it. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Did it work? You tell me, you still running? No, for the first time in 8 months, I'm actually standing still. Then yeah, it worked. They finished their beers in silence. When Lena finally stood to leave, she paused at the door. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. For giving me a chance when you had every reason not to. For not treating me like I was broken. For, her voice caught, for being exactly what I needed when I needed it most. Same to you, Lena. Same to you. The trial began on a cold Monday in early November. Lena had been nervous for days, barely eating, checking her phone constantly for updates from Agent Chen. Ethan offered to go with her, but she'd refused. You've done enough. I need to do this part myself. She was on the stand for 6 hours over 2 days. When she came back to the shop on Wednesday afternoon, she looked exhausted but lighter somehow, like she'd finally put down a weight she'd been carrying for too long. How'd it go? Ethan asked. Morrison's lawyer tried to make me look like a liar, said I was just a disgruntled employee making things up for attention. Lena smiled grimly. Then the prosecutor showed the jury 17 boxes of financial documents I'd helped them collect, showed them the bruises those men left on me, showed them the recording from your shop where they threatened Sophie. Morrison's lawyer didn't have much to say after that. When's the verdict? Could be days, could be weeks. Jury's deliberating now. She sank into her desk chair, but Chen seems confident. And after, when it's all over, Lena looked at him, and for a moment Ethan saw something like fear flash across her face. I don't know. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. But she was lying. Ethan could tell. She'd thought about it plenty. The verdict came down on a Friday. Guilty on all counts. Morrison was facing 47 years in federal prison. His associates, including Spiderweb and Fire Hydrant, took plea deals for reduced sentences in exchange for testimony against others in Morrison's network. Agent Chen called Lena personally to tell her, "You did it. You actually did it. You brought down one of the biggest money laundering operations in the Midwest." Lena cried, not scared tears this time, not exhausted tears, relief tears. That night, Ethan closed the shop early. He took Lena and Sophie out to dinner at a nice restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and waiters who introduced themselves. Sophie ordered spaghetti and got sauce all over her face. Lena laughed more than Ethan had ever heard her laugh. And for a few hours, they were just 3 people enjoying a meal together. No danger, no fear, no running, just peace. I have a confession, Sophie said around a mouthful of garlic bread. I've been calling you Miss Sunshine in my head. Is that weird? Lena nearly choked on her water. What? Because you make things brighter. Like sunshine. Daddy's been less grumpy since you started working with us. I'm not grumpy, Ethan protested. You're totally grumpy, but less now. Sophie turned back to Lena. So is it okay if I call you that, Miss Sunshine? Lena tested the words, her eyes shining. Yeah, I think I'd like that. Sophie beamed. The next few weeks were the happiest Ethan had been in 6 years. The shop was thriving. Lena had implemented a customer loyalty program that had brought in 12 new clients. Sophie's grades were improving because Lena helped her with homework every afternoon, and Ethan found himself looking forward to mornings again, found himself smiling at stupid jokes, found himself feeling like maybe, just maybe, life could be good again. Then the letter came. Ethan was under a Chevy Silverado when he heard Lena's sharp intake of breath. He rolled out wiping oil from his hands and found her staring at an envelope like it might explode. What is it? Job offer. Her voice was hollow. In Seattle, some law firms saw the news coverage of the Morrison trial. They want to hire me as their chief compliance officer. Fancy title, six-figure salary, full benefits. They even offered relocation assistance. Ethan's stomach dropped. That's great, Lena. Congratulations. Yeah, great. She didn't sound like it was great. She sounded like someone had just told her she won the lottery, but had to leave her family to collect it. Are you gonna take it? I don't know. It's everything I've been working toward. A chance to rebuild my career, to use what I learned from the Morrison case, to actually help people. To start fresh somewhere new, where nobody knows me as that woman who almost got killed. But I'd have to leave. She looked at him, and Ethan saw tears building in her eyes. I'd have to leave the shop. Leave Sophie. Leave. She stopped, swallowed hard. Leave Chicago. When do they need an answer? 2 weeks. Ethan nodded, his chest tight. That's not much time. No, it's not. They stood there in the middle of the shop, the Silverado ticking, as it cooled, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows, and neither of them said what they were really thinking. That night, Sophie found the letter on Lena's desk. She read it twice, then marched into the garage where Ethan was closing up. You have to stop her. What? Miss Lena, she's gonna leave. You have to stop her. Sophie, it's not that simple. Yes, it is. She doesn't want to go, I can tell. She's only thinking about it because she thinks she has to, because she thinks we don't need her. Sophie's voice rose. But we do need her. I need her. Don't you? Ethan crouched down eye level with his daughter. Baby, this is Lena's decision. It's a good opportunity for her. We can't ask her to give that up just because we'll miss her. Why not? She asked us to help her. Why can't we ask her to stay? Because asking someone to stay means asking them to give up everything they could have somewhere else. That's not fair to her. But it's not fair to us either. She's part of our family now. Tears were streaming down Sophie's face. I don't want another person to leave. And there it was, the real fear, the one Sophie had been carrying since her mother died. Ethan pulled her into his arms, held her while she cried. I know, sweetheart, I know, but sometimes people have to leave. It doesn't mean they don't love us. It just means they have to do what's right for them. What if what's right for them is staying? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. The next 2 weeks were agony. Lena showed up every day, did her job perfectly, smiled at customers, and helped Sophie with homework and acted like everything was normal. But there was a sadness around her now, a weight that hadn't been there before. She didn't talk about Seattle, didn't talk about the job offer, just kept working, kept organizing, kept being Miss Sunshine, even though her light was dimming. Sophie tried everything. She drew pictures of the three of them together. She left notes on Lena's desk. We need you. Please don't go. You're part of our family. She even tried to convince Lena that Seattle had terrible weather and too many earthquakes. It's true, Sophie insisted. I looked it up. They have this thing called the big one that's gonna happen someday, and the whole city might fall into the ocean. That's San Francisco, sweetheart. Different city. Oh, well, Seattle probably has something bad too. I'll keep researching. Ethan watched all of this, his heart breaking a little more each day, because he knew what Lena should do. She should take the job, should grab this second chance with both hands, should build the life she deserved, far away from Chicago and Morrison and memories of running for her life. But every time he thought about her leaving, about the office being empty again, about Sophie crying herself to sleep, about not seeing Lena's smile first thing every morning, he wanted to be selfish, wanted to ask her to stay, wanted to tell her that Seattle didn't need her the way they did. But he didn't, because that wouldn't be fair. The deadline came on a Tuesday. Lena had until 5 p.m. to accept or decline the offer. At noon, she still hadn't decided. At 2, she typed up an acceptance email but didn't send it. At 4, Sophie came bursting into the shop, threw her backpack down, and climbed right into Lena's lap. Don't go, she said simply. Please. I know it's selfish, and I know you probably should take the job, but I'm asking anyway. Don't go. Lena wrapped her arms around Sophie, buried her face in her hair. Oh, sweetheart. I love you, Miss Sunshine. And I know that's a lot to say, and maybe it's too much, but it's true. I love you, and Daddy loves you, and I think you love us too, and isn't that more important than money or fancy titles or starting over? Ethan froze in the doorway of the garage, a wrench still in his hand. He hadn't told Sophie to say any of this, hadn't coached her. This was all pure, honest Sophie. Lena was crying now, holding Sophie tight. I do love you, both of you, so much it scares me. Then stay, please. It's not that simple. Why not? Sophie pulled back, looked Lena in the eyes. Why not? Lena looked over Sophie's head at Ethan, really looked at him, and in that moment everything they'd been too afraid to say hung in the air between them. The wrench slipped from Ethan's hand, clattered to the floor. Both of them jumped. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting." Lena gently moved Sophie off her lap, stood up. "Actually, I need to talk to you, both of you. Officially." She walked to her computer, pulled up the email she'd written, turned the screen so they could see it. Then she hit delete. Sophie gasped. "I'm not taking the job," Lena said quietly. "I thought about it, thought about all the reasons I should go. Fresh start, new city, better pay, no memories of Morrison or running or fear. But you know what I realized?" She looked at Ethan. "I realized I already found my fresh start, right here in this shop with you and Sophie. And maybe the pay isn't 6 figures, and maybe I'll always have memories of what happened, but I also have new memories now, good ones, of morning coffee and Sophie's drawings and feeling like I finally belong somewhere." "Lena," Ethan's voice was rough. "Let me finish." She was crying openly now. "For 8 months, I ran. I kept thinking if I just got far enough away, if I just found the right city, the right job, the right place, then I'd feel safe. Then I'd feel home. But home isn't a place anymore. Home is people. Home is the person who stood between me and danger without hesitation. Home is the little girl who made me a welcome sign covered in glitter. Home is here." Sophie launched herself at Lena, nearly knocking her over. "You're staying, really staying. Really staying, if your dad still wants me around." Both of them turned to look at Ethan. He stood there, this man who'd spent 6 years building walls around his heart, who'd promised himself he'd never risk feeling this much again, who'd told himself that keeping Sophie safe meant keeping everyone else at arm's length. He stood there and let those walls crumble. "Yeah," he said, his voice breaking. "Yeah, we want you around." Sophie shrieked with joy. Lena laughed and cried at the same time, and Ethan crossed the room, put his arms around both of them, and held on like he'd finally found something worth holding on to. Outside, Chicago went about its business cars, honking, people rushing the city, grinding forward. Inside Moore's Auto Repair, 3 people stood together in a pool of afternoon sunlight, and for the first time in longer than any of them could remember, everything felt exactly right. That moment in the shop became the moment everything shifted. The next morning, Lena showed up at 7 like always, coffee in hand, but something was different. She wasn't just the employee anymore, wasn't just the woman they'd saved. She was part of them now, and everyone could feel it. Sophie certainly felt it. She started calling Lena every night before bed just to say goodnight, started asking if Lena wanted to come to her soccer games on Saturdays, started casually mentioning that her mother's birthday was coming up, and maybe they could all visit the cemetery together because Mommy would have liked you, Miss Sunshine. Ethan didn't know how to handle that last one. He'd been to Rachel's grave exactly twice since the funeral, once on their anniversary, once on the day Sophie was born. Both times he'd stood there feeling nothing but emptiness, talking to a headstone like it could somehow fill the void. "You don't have to," he told Lena when Sophie brought it up again. "That's a lot to ask." "She's not asking, she's inviting." Lena looked at him carefully. "And I'd like to go, if you're okay with it." "Why would you want to do that?" "Because Rachel was important to you and Sophie. And if I'm going to be part of this family." She stopped, the word hanging between them. "I should know where you came from, all of you." So they went. The 3 of them on a Sunday afternoon in late November, when the Chicago wind cut like knives and the sky threatened snow. Sophie brought flowers, daisies, because she said her mother had loved daisies, even though Ethan couldn't remember